If you like to talk about combat sports and you want to join the discussion, click the subscribe button below and the bell notification icon next to it and join Knucklehead Nation. What's going on, Knuckleheads? Welcome to the Fighters Rep video podcast. I'm your host, as usual, the Fighters Rep, and today we're talking about the UFC. UFC 249, baby. It's still going down on April 18th, according to Uncle Dana White. And this is fantastic news for fight fans because we are absolutely starved at this point. So, welcome to this edition of Anxiety Sundays, what we typically call it. And yes, UFC 249 is still going down, but it looks like a major component of the fight card is going to be missing. And when I say major component, I'm talking about Khabib Nurmagomedov. Unfortunately, because he flew out to Russia a couple weeks ago and because of this entire pandemic, he just cannot seem to be able to make it onto this card, which was supposed to happen in Brooklyn. But it looks like the fight is no longer going to happen in Brooklyn. That said, it still seems like it's scheduled for April 18th. There was a ridiculous rumor out and about that Dana White shot down on Twitter, and that rumor, according to the rumor mill, and the rumor mill in this one was Ariel Helwani, he was saying that Dana had some sort of deal with Vladimir Putin about, flying the guys out to Russia and getting Khabib to compete out there against Tony Ferguson, but it looks like that's all untrue because Uncle Dana says it's untrue, and it looks like Khabib is getting replaced. So, it looks like this fight is going to happen, The fight is going to happen, and it looks like it's going to happen, obviously, somewhere in the United States. I'm wondering where. I always feel like Florida is a great location. They do bare knuckle there. I'm from Florida, so, anything can happen in Florida. For better or for worse, let's say. Anything can go down in Florida. And, I'm sure Dana White will be able to muster up some location, if not in Florida, somewhere in the boondocks that doesn't mind people fighting with this pandemic going on. And Dana White, who I consider one of, if not the best promoter in the world, I'm sure he's going to figure this out, man. He's going to find a way to make this fight happen. Donald Trump, I know, is a great friend of Dana White. He wants, all these businesses to get back to normal. He wants the status quo back ASAP. And I feel like Dana White, being a business mind, is going to want to do exactly what Donald Trump is going to want to do, and that's just to get that ball rolling again. So I'm not really surprised, Also, Dana obviously loves, what he does. He loves what he does, and, there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to find a way to make this happen. So, before I continue and we take a look at the lightweight rankings and start talking about who we think should get this fight, if Khabib's not going to get it, I want to remind you guys, please like, comment, share, and definitely subscribe if you're, joining us live on Facebook. Definitely like and follow the page if you're not already. If you're joining us live on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Either way, you'll be joining Knucklehead Nation. We do most of our stuff on YouTube, but is also on Facebook. We do these live chats now. And we air our live fights and we upload all of our fights to YouTube. We're also uploading one round every day of free fights on Facebook, so you can check that out too. But you can go back and watch all our fights on the YouTube channel, so definitely subscribe. There should be a link in the description below. Also, if you want to donate to the channel, the links are in the description below. Also to the super chat if you're on YouTube. Definitely anything you guys donate gets reinvested right back into the promotion. And you'll be helping us grow the only pro kickboxing basically promotion in the entire state of California that does exclusively unified rules kickboxing. And the new rule set that was just devised by the IKF, which I'm extremely excited about. And, our show is postponed. The May 29th show, which was Fighters Rep 10, that is postponed. But, I'm hoping the tentative August 21st date that we had goes forward. But who knows with this pandemic, man? Who knows what's going to happen with this ridiculous pandemic? So, knuckleheads, first off, let's see what's going on in the chat real quick. We've got some activity going on in the chat here. We've got Fight Life Nation. Our brother, Marco from Fight Life Nation is in here. He says, I'm pumped for this, although I'm not for it being on pay-per-view. The rumored Covington versus Woodley would be fire. I agree, man. That would be a really, really fun fight to watch. I wonder if it'll happen. G-Dog's in here. G-Dog0331, thank you for joining, brother. He says, all the news was due to a fake account claiming false information. Then Dana stepped in and spilled some beans. I love it, man. I love it. And Tori Valenzuela has joined us on Facebook. Thank you so much for watching with us. Fight Life Nation says, the Ariel Helwani post was a fake account. It was fake Ariel Twitter account. Oh, I see. And Marco Martinez is saying tribal land somewhere. G-Dog is following up with Dothan, Alabama. So, I mean, obviously these are ridiculous suggestions, but plausible. Plausible at this point for the UFC to be holding UFC 249. Fight Life Nation saying, what fights would you like to see? Of course, I would like to see the Colby fight. Let's take a look at the lightweight rankings now that you've asked that. Besides Tony Ferguson being the number one contender, we have Dustin Poirier at number 2, a guy Khabib beat recently, but nonetheless, it would be a very exciting fight against Tony Ferguson. I think Dustin Poirier poses a problem for anybody he fights against, right? He's always in a good fight. He even had Khabib in some awkward moments there in that fight, even though Khabib dominated. But he did have him in a couple awkward moments there, a couple scary moments for Khabib in that fight. Still, Khabib with the domination, but Poirier would be a good fight for Ferguson. We've got the big money fight, Conor McGregor, and if they are going to put it on the pay-per-view, which they are, that's a fantastic fight for the UFC to make as far as a money fight goes. And obviously, who's not going to want to tune in to Conor McGregor versus Tony Ferguson? That's a fight that could very well happen. We're also talking about Justin Gaethje at the number 4 slot. A guy who, in my opinion, is probably the most deserving of the bunch, right? I mean, considering that Dustin Poirier already fought Khabib, he had his shot. Maybe give Gaethje to Ferguson and let's see what's what. And then, another fascinating guy is Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker's always fascinating. Paul Felder is still in the mix. Donald Cerrone, but I don't think Cerrone is going to be able to beat Ferguson. We've already seen him in there against Ferguson and Khabib. Finally, we've got Charles Oliveira at number 8. And I must say, Charles Oliveira looked very, very good against Kevin Lee in that last fight. And I would definitely not sleep on Charles Oliveira. The guy is an absolute beast. And that's not somebody that you're going to want to sleep on. So, out of all those guys, I personally would love to see Justin Gaethje get the nod. I think Conor McGregor obviously would generate the most money and be the most exciting for the game. But I think Justin Gaethje should get the nod. Although I don't know where he's at as far as training. I don't know where these guys are at. But, I'd like to see those fights. Dustin Poirier versus Ferguson would be fun, too. I mean, he is, I guess, the next most deserving according to the UFC's rankings. But, for me, I think Justin Gaethje is the most deserving guy because he knocked out Donald Cerrone and then Conor did, and somehow Conor was able to jump ahead of him. And, I don't think that that's the fairest situation. So let's see what we got here. Fight Life Nation says, I heard Francis is definitely going to be on the card and Ngannou, not George. That's a good one, brother. It would be fun to, anytime Francis Ngannou's on a card, for me, I'm watching that shit. I like watching him. Fight Life Nation says, should be only American-based fighters. Most others can't get visas. He also says, Tony needs to fight. He only fights once a year. Dana might skip him and put Conor versus Khabib. Man, that would be a real shame. Tony versus Gaethje is a sick fight. It would be fun. I agree that would be a very fun fight. That's a fight that I would like to see very much. Let me know if you guys are watching right now, watching on the replay. Let me know what fights you think should be made. Big shout out to George Youth watching on Facebook Live right now. And big shout out to everybody joining us on YouTube Live. Thank you guys so much for the support. Let's see here. Fight Life Nation also says, unfortunately, Conor has announced he will not be a part of the card. He is pushing for a nationwide lockdown in Ireland. I did see him pushing for that lockdown. I think that's very responsible of him. Very nice that he's doing that. He's going to need to do everything he can to clean up his reputation out there and everywhere else. David Rivera says, Masvidal versus Usman. Woodley versus Colby. Man, that would be sick. That would be sick. Fight Life Nation saying Masvidal Usman would be huge. Masvidal originally threw his name in as a Khabib opponent, but the Usman bout seems more likely, and they have been talking a lot of trash to each other on social media, and by they, obviously, I'm referring to Jorge Masvidal and Kamaru Usman. They are just going at it. They're going at it on social media. And hey, if we get a chance to set the record straight on that one, let's go ahead and do it. Before I continue, Knuckleheads, I don't know if you guys have noticed, I don't know if you could tell on your end, but man, look at the camera here, man. We've updated our webcam big time. I hope you guys like the image a bit better, the sound. We've got the microphone already, so that's all set. But I think, with this camera, now the ability to bring people on live onto the show, I think it's going to add a lot of excitement to the show. We're going to be able to bring guests on remotely, and you're going to be able to see them and hear them, not just hear them. We've already done that with with John Garcia. We've done that with Chad George. So, we're planning on having more stuff like that. David Rivera busting out with Cejudo versus Valentina. Oh my goodness, what a trip you are, and what a trip Henry Cejudo is. That guy's ridiculous, but you know what? I love him. I love the king of cringe, man. That guy's hilarious, especially when he does the mean face, and he gets all amped. He's ridiculous. Shout out to Mario Reyes watching us on the Facebook Live. Thank you so much, man. If you guys haven't already, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe right here. If you're on the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, the bell notification icon next to it, and join us, especially at a time like this, man. There's nothing going on in the world right now. Everybody's sitting at home, so we can get on here, talk about the fight game, talk about whatever it is you guys want to talk about. Also we can always bring on whatever guests that you guys are interested in hearing from. I mean, I could always reach out. We have had enough pretty big names on the show so far to be able, I think, to get some more on. So, did I just say moron? So, let me know who you guys want to hear from, and we'll make it happen as we sit here in this pandemic, which, I can't believe it. I mean, I feel like I'm in the Middle Ages or something. I mean, it's quite ridiculous being in this situation. That's pretty much it, Knuckleheads. In other news, what I heard, Actually, let me see what Fight Life Nation is saying here. It says, Cejudo most likely lost his next opponent since Aldo's in Brazil. If he wants to fight soon, there's some killers at bantamweight. I'm sure there are. And, I've even heard rumors of him moving up again. But that would be a scary prospect for him. He'd be taking on Alexander Volkanovski, Max Holloway, Zabit, Brian Ortega. Those are really big guys. He's got some killers at bantamweight for sure. I mean, there's Marlon Moraes, who's still there. Aljamain Sterling is pretty good. Peter Yan is really good. Pedro Munoz is a beast. So definitely some guys at bantamweight if he wants to stay there. Corey Sandhagen, like Fight Life Nation is saying. But, other news I kind of wanted to touch on real quick, you guys. I don't know if you guys saw this in the world of boxing. But basically, I guess somebody asked Lennox Lewis who his toughest fight was. And, despite his fight with Vitaly Klitschko, where he was losing on the scorecards, and I think everybody thought he was losing that fight, and then he subsequently retired before giving Vitaly the rematch. And, despite getting knocked out straight up by Hasim Rahman, he said that his toughest fight ever was against Evander Holyfield. I mean, it's crazy the way, the human mind works. You were in there life and death against Vitaly Klitschko, losing that fight. And I got all the respect in the world for Lennox Lewis. I actually think he's probably one of the best heavyweights to ever live. That's the way I feel about Lennox Lewis. But, he was, in my opinion, and I agreed with the judges who also had Vitaly ahead in that fight. But for whatever reason, he said that Evander Holyfield was the toughest guy he fought. And then he tried making a distinction between the toughest guy he fought and the toughest fight he's had, which I didn't really understand. I guess he was saying because Evander Holyfield had a much more developed amateur career, that he was a tougher guy. But, wouldn't that make him a more technical guy as opposed to just a tougher guy? Or is that a tougher guy to deal with? Because, he sure didn't give Lennox Lewis the hardest time in the ring from what I saw compared to, guys that he fought. And then, he also said Ray Mercer was his toughest fight. So I thought that was kind of weird. Just that whole, Evander Holyfield was my toughest fight. And then he said it was because he went 24 rounds with him. I'm sure Vitaly Klitschko could have probably gone 24 rounds with him as well had they fought, but he decided to retire before giving Klitschko the rematch. And then, Hasim Rahman knocked you out, so, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's the fight game, people get knocked out, but, I don't understand why guys would take away from the effort, fantastic effort, that is, of certain opponents. It's over, you're out the fight game, is it an ego thing? Do you actually feel that way? And if you do, explain more clearly. I just thought it was very weird. Fight Life Nation says, how do you think Lennox Lewis in his prime would fare in today's heavyweight division? I actually think he would have done very well. He did get knocked out by Rahman, but I don't know if you could say he's chinny, because he really, he was very tough and showed a good chin in a lot of his other fights. And he was big enough, I think, strong enough, and fast enough to deal with a lot of the other guys. So I think he would have done fine. And I think he would have done really well. I think the only guy that would have probably beaten him or given him a really rough fight would have been Fury or Joshua. I think Deontay Wilder would have probably had no shot against him just because his size and boxing ability and jab would have been, I think, too much for Deontay Wilder. But anyway, knuckleheads, that's all I've got for you guys now. I'm going to sign out, but we'll definitely be back on tomorrow, 7 p.m. Pacific, as we usually do. If you haven't, again, please subscribe, like, follow, comment, share, show some love to the channel. Get your Fighters Rep gear in the links below in the description. Anything, again, you guys spend here gets reinvested right back into the promotion. So thank you for your time, knuckleheads. You guys have a great night, and I will see you guys tomorrow.